Howdy, folks. I said that while scratching my mustache, meaning that my hand was over my mouth when I said howdy, folks. You know, good professional streaming. But yeah, we're back in the Alps after a couple of weeks of reprieve because members only info. But isn't the watch along right now? Isn't that supposed to be happening? Who knows? Go check the Kiara member tab, I guess. And then also no Ophi stream later. So I'm doing this, instead. Now, first thing I wanted to mention, shocking thing I found out. Who would be surprised that, the EU is actually more popular of a player base, than America here. So I have been forced to swap to dreaded EU servers. So my ping may be a little weird. But let's see. Now, over the past few days, I have been playing this in the like a game or two in the time before before Kiara starts her streams. And in that time, I have unlocked the assault like equipment for the assault class that are like the machine guns. As you can see, I'm running around with one right now, playing as the Austrians. Now this is these are like the only the closest things to like assault rifles you can get, and I think there's only allowed 2 per squad. And you'll see their effectiveness if I can actually make up 2 people. But this specific gun I have right here is a very interesting one historically, because it was insane. Would you believe about 75% of the deaths in World War I were caused by artillery? Just like what just happened to me there? But anyway, this is a Madsen, and a Madsen is a very, very ahead of its time. It was Danish, I think. I'm pretty sure it was Danish. Yeah. I don't even know what just killed me. I don't even have a thing that said what killed me there, like a kill feed. Weird. But it was very early. It's basically the first light machine gun, or yeah, I'd call it a light machine gun. All right then. Well, folks, you didn't get to see it fired that round, but next time in a couple moments. Well, let's go really quick over classification of machine guns. So there are generally 3 types of what we would call machine guns, maybe 4. And then those have sub-variations. The biggest are the heavy machine guns. Now, what a heavy machine gun is depends on what year we are talking about. Before World War I, before the end of World War I, a heavy machine gun was a machine gun that weighed a lot. So Maxims, Vickers, stuff like that. The Browning 1917, and usually what made these weigh a lot is the water cooling system around them, around the barrel. These are your mounted, like they're on a tripod or like a sled of some sort. They've got like a huge ammo box, and they just don't move. They're not supposed to move anywhere. And they are called this because they literally are heavy. They weigh like 150, 200 pounds altogether, Yeah, like, and in games, you'll be able to run around and fire them from the hip and stuff, but like, that's not really a real thing. Like, they don't have stocks on them. Like, you literally can't do that. Though one guy in World War II did. they've got, like, they don't have stocks, but they have, like, a little, like, pistol grip on the back. Some of them do. The American ones do. The Maxims don't have pistol grip. Here, well, there's one. There, yeah. So you can see here. See how this has just, like, buttons that I put my thumb on? This is on Austrian Sforza. And you press with your thumbs. And that pressing with your thumbs is the trigger. You can't carry this around in your arms and use this, you know? The Browning 1917 did have a kind of more of a pistol grip on the back. Like it's like someone just like shoved a handgun in. Why'd I spawn outside of the trench? So there is a guy, a Marine in World War II, an American Marine, who was like one of the last members of his squad holding a position, and he held off many Japanese before he eventually like realized he was one of the only guys left and they had to retreat. So to provide covering fire, he picked up, he took it off the tripod, which, you know, gets rid of like 100 pounds, but that still means the gun's still like 50 pounds. And he carried it in his hands, just like spraying from the hip with it, which provided enough like suppressing fire for everyone to evacuate, and he got the Medal of Honor for that. Because I believe it was specifically like a bonsai charge he repelled by doing that. Basically just walking backwards, hip firing a machine gun. But that is like the only time that's ever really been seen, like, or documented, like a water-cooled machine gun being used, like, as if it were essentially the next category. Well, really quick, they changed the name of heavy machine guns very quickly after that. Heavy machine guns soon came to mean something else, which was right after World War One. Like gigantic machine guns became a thing. 50 BMG, which is like, you know, like 50, like what the Barrett 50 cal fires. That is called 50 BMG. That is called 50 Browning machine gun. And what that is they realized that you can just take a machine gun and just make it big. Like so big, to where like it has to be mounted on like a vehicle or like some form of, you know, track or something, but to where it's basically like small rapid fire artillery. It's not really meant for shooting people. It's meant to shoot light armor, or like, you know, like you shoot it at trucks, you shoot it at mouse sensitivity. You shoot it at planes, stuff like that. Where you need basically like heavy penetration. And that kind of becomes what a heavy machine gun is. One that is meant for like, it's not meant to shoot at people. It's meant to shoot at buildings, armor, things like that. I don't think I've even fired this. I'm just getting taken out left and right. Let's see. Can I cut that? Oh no, I don't have bolt cutters on this. But what we then get next is kind of what I'm well, we get a kind of, like, what we kind of think of, more... There's a medium machine gun, and medium machine guns are the most, common one to come to mind is, like, the Browning, like, 1919, which is, basically an air-cooled 1917, and basically the purpose of... Oh my god, that's a grenade. I'm just getting slaughtered. Basically, what a 1919 is a 1917, but air-cooled. So instead of having the big water jacket, it just has, like, a thing on it so that you don't burn your hands. And so it's much lighter. Now again, these are not supposed to be fired, like, from just, like, a guy running around with them. What makes these a medium machine gun is they're much lighter weight. But you can, it's basically, so like I said, those water-cooled ones, you are not moving with those. You set those down, and then you are, for the entire battle, that thing is not moving. A medium machine gun, an MG0815 is actually a water-cooled medium machine gun. Reload. But to where these will sometimes have stocks, sometimes not. But basically, what these are supposed to do is, like, okay, everyone runs and captures a position, right? You then move your medium machine guns up, and you move them very quickly, set them down, and then this stops counterattacks. They function as a... They're basically trying to get the role of a heavy machine gun, but in a much more mobile package. Like I said, the US 1917 is the heavy version. Ooh. The medium version is the 1919. This is also kind of what an MG34 and an MG42 are. But to where those fall into kind of a different definition of a medium machine gun, which is a general purpose machine gun. Now, those are basically medium machine guns that you also give to the guy who would use a heavy machine gun. So you just get rid of the idea of a heavy machine gun and just say, like, the guys who have them on vehicles, the guys who have them on tripod mounts, the guys who are running up to prevent counterattacks, all of those guys, medium machine guns. There aren't many medium machine guns in World War I. There are a few, but like a big thing of medium machine guns is that they're going to be belt fed, and they don't really work as like they don't really work as a rifle. Like you can't use it just like casually use it like I am doing right now, where like you just like go up and like swing it up to the sights. There is a couple documented cases. There's a very weird thing that some guys did in World War II. This is one of the few documented cases of like a in-field modification being used, to where a couple of guys took some 1919s in the Marines and they put M1 Garand stocks on them to allow them to be fired from the shoulder, and they used them on Iwo Jima, and one of these guys like almost single-handedly charged and took a bunker with this, which he got a Medal of Honor from. the Marines in World War II loved getting Medal of Honors by carrying machine guns that they weren't supposed to be using, normally. But and generally, like, yeah, they look very weird, the Stinger machine guns. I think there were only like 5 made. There people like make like reproduction versions, and I believe there are probably more reproduction versions than there are actual versions of it. But the you get into the kind of weird thing that comes around during World War I, which is hoping I don't get seen here, because this is a pretty good spot. If I can get to the side of this truck. Now, during this gun here is a Madsen, I believe translated from Dutch or Danish. I can't remember if it's Dutch or Danish, this gun, but it's from one of those north of Belgian countries where the people there start with a D. It's one of those two. They, I believe, translated to English. This is called the Madsen machine rifle. And it's very early. It's the first light machine gun. Now, what a light machine gun is that it's kind of shaped like a rifle. But it has, like, it's very light compared to a medium machine gun, so that 1 or 2 guys could use it. Basically, you can fire it, you can do what I'm doing right now. You can sweep a trench, like, firing from the shoulder with it. If you really need to. Now, but once you sweep that trench, you can now, like I was saying, how the medium machine guns kind of are there to back up and prevent counterattacks. Light machine guns, like, show up to the party beforehand. They move in with the assault. Uh-oh. I went in too deep. And I hear Italians behind me. Trench Club. Oh god, there's Italians all around me. Ah! But, yeah, so, what a light machine gun is for, like I said, is, during the assault phase, like, when you are attacking, your light machine guns go up with the attackers, and then they bipod down. But if so they can fire like a rifle while shooting, but then they can sit down and get into bipod mode, once they've established like some cover and whatnot, like I am doing right now. And like I said, the Madsen, was the first of these. These are Reload. These normally, in video games and whatnot, these normally will be run by one guy. In the actual war, both World Wars, and even still, like, today in most armies, they are not run by one guy, they're run by two guys. One guy uses the gun, the other guy, carries the ammo, and also helps the, gunner reload. You'll notice the magazine, is on the top of this gun. That was very popular for light machine guns of the World Wars. The reason why, is because it lets you have a couple extra rounds when you are prone, right? Versus when you are, you know, like, because if you have too long of a mag and you try to bipod and you lay down, your mag will hit the ground. So you have to have a mag that is short enough to clear the ground. The BAR does this, which is why the BAR only has 20 rounds. So a lot of these early light machine guns either have some type of magazine that the assistant gunner can also load from the top. The BAR is like the main exception. The Shosha also is an exception to that. The Shosha is a weird one that'll get. Well, those two we'll cover in a minute. But the others of this era are like the Lewis gun has the pan-mounted mag on the top. Yeah, like to where like when you are like laying down prone, you just lay down and sit there, and then you don't move. You just aim the gun and pull the trigger, and then once you are out, you just sit there, and the guy next to you takes the mag off, puts a new one on, and then you just start firing again. And now that guy, the Shosha is how it's pronounced. I've heard from many Americans, well, like Shosha, I believe is more kind of how it's supposed to be pronounced in French. People say, the Chow Chow, the Choke Chat, stuff like that. But that was also, bottom fed. And a lot of people like to call the Shosha very, like, terrible, and it technically is. There is, like... well, I'll get to them in a minute. What, the DP-28, I don't know why it's called the DP-28. In Russian, they call it the DP-27. But for some reason in English, we call it the DP-28, and nobody knows why. Some, like, I guess a typo somewhere just completely changed the reason how we call this Russian machine gun. But, that is top-fed, like I said, the Madsen's top-fed, the Type 99, Japanese light machine gun is top-fed, the, Bren is top fed. All these kind of like early machine guns are all top fed for these reasons. But and all of them, yeah, kind of fit the same thing of like it's an air-cooled machine gun that two guys can easily move around and provide suppressing fire while the rest of the squad is moving up. Germany in World War II didn't really do this. Also, Italy didn't either. They just kind of went hard on the medium machine gun. Technically, the FG-42 is a light machine gun. I'll get to the FG-42 later, though, as we do this more chronologically. The FG-42, though, has its side-mounted mag. which the assistant gunner can load from the side there. But oh god, spawning the gas. So going into the war, there are kind of these light machine guns. But there aren't too many of them. And that is when two kind of strange ones come up. That at the time they are called automatic rifles. And they still are called automatic rifles when talking from a historic standpoint. Which is, like I said, a light machine gun is a gun that you can fire from the shoulder, but it is meant to be used on a bipod. The Shosha, like you see kind of how I have to like kind of cup this underneath with like my left hand. It's like there's no real place to hold these like Madsons. You can fire it from the shoulder, but you're not really supposed to. The Shosha is the first one that is like, oh yeah, use this like a rifle when you're moving from A to B, and then sit down, reload, and then put on the bipod. So that gets called, but like the bipod is kinda weird to where the Shoshas also weren't really supposed to be fired on full auto. They could be, but they only had a 20 round magazine, so they were kind of more supposed to be, and they had a super low fire rate. Like, about the fire rate of this Madsen, which you can see is very low. So they're kind of supposed to be fired on semi. Which when you're thinking, the guys around you all have, bolt actions that in France are either a 8-shot tube loader, a 3-shot end block clip, or a 5-shot end block clip. So being the guy in the squad that has an essentially semi-automatic with a bipod is just kind of much better. Just waiting to see who comes over this ridge. But oh my god, that was a rocket that landed right on top of me. The way that, like, these kind of got, used is in that, oh yeah, like, it's basically a rifle that goes with the assault squad, and then can bipod if necessary. The BAR, well, a big thing with the Shosha is that they're very bad. They're uncomfortable to use. They can jam easy. But, so for example, if you made 10 Shoshas, 2 of them will probably jam in a fight, right? 2 or 3 of them will probably jam in a fight. But they are so cheap. They jam because they are cheap, but making them that cheap means you can make a lot of them. So if you make 10 and 3 of them jam, that means you have 7 working machine guns, where the other side only has 3 working machine guns to begin with. All of them work, but there's only 3 of them. So at the end of the day, yeah, you have 3 jammed machine guns, they have no jammed machine guns, but you have 7 working machine guns, and they only have 3 working machine guns. So that is I think there's like the like 250,000 Shoshas in World War One, and the next closest was like something like 25,000 or like 50,000 Lewis guns. So it's like, oh yeah, they just kept making them because they were like, it's cheap enough, we can just keep making them, and that's enough. If it stops working, like if yours stops working, there's another guy with another one close enough, so you'll be fine. But America, now when you're using the Shosha, there was a weird concept called walking fire, which is when you were going from trench line to trench line, basically, you take your Shosha, put it on semi-automatic, and every time you take 2 steps, I think it was every time your left foot hits the ground, you fire a shot from the hip. Just randomly at the trench, you just fire a shot from the hip. And this is on paper just enough of a steady stream of fire to make it to where, in theory, the other guys will not peek out of the trench and try to shoot you. The like way that this kind of gets seen is they're like, yeah, this will totally work. It doesn't really. It's more everyone just runs across the trench as fast as they can, and then when they are there, use semi-auto in cover, and then swap to full auto when you actually get in the trench, and then fire from the hip in the trench on full auto. So what the BAR is designed from the start to fire from walking fire. It's meant to be a rifle, and it is an automatic rifle. It's much more in line with like an FAL or like a G3, but just much heavier. Because it's using milled steel instead of stamped steel. But come on. Oh no, there's barbed wire here. Come on. Can I get over? Oh. Ah! I did make it, but at what cost? So, the VAR is super heavy. It's not heavy for a light machine gun, it's heavy for a battle rifle, but like I said, battle rifles wouldn't become a thing until like World War II. But it basically is a battle rifle. And the idea with the BAR was, yeah, you carry it from the hip, and then you take a few steps, and then you fire, and then you take a few steps and fire, and then maybe you get into cover, and you shoot it from your shoulder on semi-auto like it's a rifle, and then when you get up to the trenches, you flip the switch to full auto, and you hop in the trench, and you just fire on full auto in the trench. It's basically, they wanted an assault rifle, but they didn't have the idea of how to mechanically make an assault rifle yet. So they kind of just made one up using a BAR. Now, the BAR was not supposed to be a light machine gun. That is why it has the bottom mounted mag. It doesn't have a bipod in World War I. Because it wasn't meant to be used in a bipoded, like, secured position. It was meant to be mobile. But right after the war, it's considered pretty good for World War I. Maybe not the best, one of the better guns to have in World War I. Where the only real detriment to it is that if you look at it compared to the other light machine guns, yeah, it's not a good light machine gun, but if you look at it compared to like as a like support rifle, it's pretty good in that regard. But after World War One, we get the kind of updates to the BAR, which are meant to actually turn it into a light machine gun. So what those entail is it was made much heavier, by putting like just like more stuff on it, like a machine gun stock, a heavier barrel, a bipod, and it's apparently a very bad bipod, stuff like that, where it no longer, it is just either a not very good light machine gun, but at the same time it is also now too unwieldy to use as a rifle. So it's kind of the worst of both worlds, with the automatic rifle versus light machine gun thing. What does eventually kind of take it over is Europe starts kind of modifying, starts doing like kind of contracts and like their own versions of BARs, where they add like pistol grips to them. They basically turn them into better light machine guns instead of the American one, which is kind of, like I said, the worst of both worlds. It's a bad light machine gun and it's a bad like fighting rifle. But eventually, America would just kind of stop with this idea, once we get to like Vietnam, and we just kind of copy the German idea of the general purpose machine gun, which is just give everyone a medium machine gun with the M60. Just trying to figure out where they are. The Germans, meanwhile, get the FG-42. Now, the FG-42 is very weird. You see it in a lot of video games and whatnot. There weren't actually that many of them. I think there might have only been 7,000, if I understand correctly. And if I remember off the top of my head correctly. 7,000 or like 17,000 versus like 600,000 like STG-44s, you know? Oh, hello, Meow. You've come, you're learning about machine guns. Now, the way German paratroopers worked was kinda, paratroopers are weird. 'Cause, you know, everything is in a plane, and then you gotta get everything on the ground. And how you do that, is kind of odd, and it's a hard thing to do. Obviously everyone has their normal gun, like their normal, like, just like rifle and stuff, on them when they jump out of the plane. But not usually. Some countries make modifications for this. America had the M1A1 carbine, which is an M1 carbine with a folding stock for paratroopers, so it's easier to jump out of the plane with. Russia also had the AKS-74 and the AKS-47, which are, they have folding stocks for paratroopers. Um, but you can't jump out of the plane with like a medium machine gun, you know. So different countries do this differently. The way Russia does it right now, I know, is Russia has like a vehicle, like an armored personnel vehicle, that they put all the guns in, and then they drop that out of the plane, and then it has parachutes on it. Everyone else lands near it, and then everyone like scrambles to get to that, and then get the guns out, and you know, well, they all get in the vehicle, and then they get out of it with the guns. But the way Germany did it at the start of World War II was, they had like everything in like crates, like kind of like boxes, you know, like all the machine guns. So they would push that out of the plane first with a parachute on it, and then everyone would jump after it. And then you land, you use your rifles to like secure the area, and then you go open the box, get the machine guns out, and then now you can advance and take the rest of the whatever area you're going to. Now, because German kind of squads were all set around machine gun usage, having those machine guns was very important. America wasn't as set up around them, so they weren't, like, for example, as big on, like, we have to go get the machine guns now. But they were dropping them, though I think Americans did drop with guys carrying 1919s, to where one guy would carry all the ammo, and then one guy would just carry the gun, and then they'd jump out of the plane together. And then they'd meet up on the ground and load the gun. So, what happens is Crete in Greece, the island of Crete, Germany invades, because Italy is having a very hard time taking Greece. Greece in World War II is a front that is not covered much, but it was a very, like, Greece, like, held out a lot, in looking at the very, like, kind of, like, under-equipped, like, shabby army. They were able to hold back for quite a long time, and caused Italy a lot of problems. But, a moment of silence there in the combat. So, the thing with the invasion, my voice cracked there for a second. The thing with the invasion of Crete is that they push out the crates with all the machine guns in them, right? And then they all jump out of the planes. And due to, like, weird wind patterns and, like, just the geography of the island and stuff, let's see. Alright. The machine guns land in a completely different spot than they intended them to. So the German paratroopers on Crete, basically only have bolt-action rifles for, like, most of the fight. I think they eventually do take the island, but it is much harder than it was initially intended to be, and they lost a lot more men than they were supposed to. So, they come up with an idea, and they're like, we cannot have this situation where we are having where we're dropping guns and then jumping out of the plane trying to chase the guns in the air. So they're like, we need something that basically they decided that they needed machine guns that the paratrooper, don't shoot me, he missed again. He missed again? Okay, got him. Ah! They decided that they basically do what the Americans did, but then they were like, well, what if that guy gets separated? What if the guy who jumps with the machine gun is cut off? And they were like, well, we can't give everyone a machine gun, but we can increase everyone's firepower enough to kind of make up for a machine gun. So they make the FG-42. And now what the FG-42 is set up to do, which is my favorite full named gun. The full name of the FG-42 is the Fallschirmjägergewehr 42. In classic German, just shove everything together to make a new word. Fallschirmjägergewehr, is, you know, yeah, it sure is, but I love it. Fallschirmjägergewehr, basically means paratrooper rifle, when translated to English. I think, like, in broken translation, oh my god, in Italian. In broken translation, it's like falling hunter's rifle. But yeah, paratrooper's rifle is basically, it. But the idea behind it is it's semi and full automatic. It has a bipod, but it's a very, like, small, integrated bipod. So that, and it's also got an integrated bayonet. Like, the bayonet is, like, a weird, thing that a couple other guns from this era tried, which is, it's just a spike that is, like, in a tube under the barrel, and you pull it out of the tube, and then you put it back into the tube, but now backwards, and it locks that way. So it's not like a normal bayonet that's, like, you know, like a knife with, like, a clip on it. It's literally a spike that is just on the end of the gun. So what you end up with is kind of the same idea as a BAR, but more lightweight. And more, like I said, more lightweight and with an actual usable bipod. So the idea behind this is that you have everyone drops. You have a guy who is the designated machine gunner, right? And he is trained to be a machine gunner. But in the case that he gets killed, or what his job is, use the gun like a machine gun, you know? Like, go to a situation, set up, and do what I am doing right now in the game. Like, bipod up, aim, fire short bursts to suppress enemies, cover, like, you know, make sure that they can't cross, like, streets, stuff like that. And then he's got an assistant with him. But if he and everyone else uses the gun on semi-auto, and their job is to just be riflemen, protect the machine gunner, go hold positions, but use it, you know, from the shoulder, firing on semi, so you can be more mobile and a bit more accurate. Now, if the machine gunner guy gets lost, or he dies, or he loses his gun in the drop, stuff like that, well, everyone else just has the same gun, so they too can be like, okay, well, you are next in line to be the machine gunner, so now it is your job to take the machine gun position. So it is very much based around, like, okay, yeah, the squad has to be, because you don't know what's going to happen when you drop out of a parachute, it's never going to work as you intend it to be. So we need to be prepared to have the squad like react to any anything weird that can happen. Now, that is kind of what that kind of sets into state an interesting thing with Cold War light machine guns. Where, while most of the coming out of the war, that pattern would be copied by a lot of NATO-like ideas. To where, if you look at, like, some NATO countries, Australia and Vietnam is a good example. Australia and Vietnam, like, their squad setup is, everyone has FALs. Now, FALs are battle rifles. Now, what a battle rifle is kind of in between a rifle and a light machine gun. It's basically a light machine gun in idea, but made more ergonomic to be a rifle, and then lightened for infantry purposes. The M14, the G3, the FAL, stuff like that. There were some available in World War II. The M1 Garand is a battle rifle, though it does take clips instead of a magazine, but that's fine, and it's only 8 rounds, but yeah, whatever. The SVT-40 from the Soviets, the Gewehr 43 from Germany, which was not fielded much. It was used mostly on the Eastern Front, but not much. Where the like, this idea comes together of what a battle rifle is. And a battle rifle usually will be semi and full auto. Will have like a 20-round magazine. I guess, is this a ghost? What's going on there? But kind of falls into that FG-42 idea, to where you can have guys using it as a standard or infantry rifle, but then they can also kind of use it as a machine gun. Some situations will require it being a better machine gun, kind of. Like I said, Australia and Vietnam used, they went into Vietnam with FALs in the squad that had heavy barrels and 30-round magazines, to where that is the designated machine gun FAL. But 2 riflemen could fill the role of that machine gunner if need be. Now, Russia starts an interesting thing right after World War II. I touched upon this in I think it's a VOD of me playing Call of Duty, where I talk about AK history. Oh my god. Where I talk about AK history. And what happens, right, is they develop an intermediate cartridge. So up until World War II, from a military perspective, there are 2 different types of bullets. There are rifle bullets. Those go in rifles, and also machine guns. And there are pistol bullets. Those go in pistols and submachine guns. Now, the pistol bullets don't have a lot of range, but they also don't have a lot of recoil, meaning that you can fire them with like pretty good accuracy at close range in quick succession. The rifle rounds have range, but they have more recoil. And they also weigh a lot, so you can't carry as much of them, and it's harder to be accurate with repeating fire on them. Uh, so, what is called now there are technically some intermediate cartridges from before the wars. But they're mostly hunting cartridges. 30 Remington, 30 Winchester centerfire, things like that. They're mostly bullets that are meant to hunt deer with. A deer is about it. Basically, like a thing. If it will kill a deer, it'll kill a person. Deer and people are about the same size. So this bullet that kind of fits in between, kind of starts with like deer hunting ammo. But it doesn't really develop from there. It like more kind of starts with like just kind of making the military rounds smaller. So what you end up having, is Germany makes the STG-44, right? And then Russia makes the AK-47. Well, not just yet. Russia makes the... let's see. Russia makes the, gas mask? Ah, no, too long. Russia makes the RPD first. And then they make the SKS, but then they eventually go to the AK. Now what the RPD is, what makes that interesting, is that the RPD is a machine gun in the sense that it has a bipod, it has a machine gun, it's got a stock meant to be used while laying prone, and it is belt fed. But in size, it's kind of an assault rifle. It's much smaller than contemporary light machine guns. The BAR weighs like 20 pounds, like 22 pounds while being used in World War II. The RPD weighs like 11 pounds. So by going to an assault rifle cartridge in this machine gun, it lets them make the machine gun much smaller, to where, hey, now, paratroopers, you just jump out of the plane with the RPD. There's, you know, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And at the ranges that you end up actually fighting in, it works perfectly fine. You don't really have much of a range issue with it. But, and now this, like I said, it uses the same bullet as the SKS, the 7.62x39. And this is what would be called the idea of the SAL, or the Squad Automatic Weapon. Now, what a SAL does is it is a light machine gun that is chambered in the ammo that the standard infantry rifle uses in an intermediate sense. Technically, that intermediate sense part is debatable, but if it wasn't in there, then that would make pretty much every light machine gun a SAL, because like every light machine gun is issued in the infantry like cartridge, because like why would you issue it in anything else? So using it as their in the infantry cartridge means that the whole squad uses the same ammo, and it's a lightweight ammo that you can carry a lot of and doesn't recoil much, and to where Russia having a bunch of SKSs and supporting an RPD would be a pretty fantastic loadout in the post-World War II years. But they got even better because they invent the AK. And now the AK is magazine fed, right? So they immediately just are like, okay, and it's full auto with the SKS, isn't? They just kind of drop the SKS. They move it to like reserve units and guards and stuff, and they sell a bunch of them. China loves them. China can't get enough of the SKS. Just kind of the way that Chinese tactics were kind of set up. They just really went around the SKS. I think I talked about this in my AK discussion. How China, where all the other communist countries went hard on the AK, China went hard on the SKS style. But Russia quickly, in the late 50s, realized the RPD, not the best. It was really good for World War II, but it's not World War II anymore. They just really like AKs, like the way that the AK works and how you can reload an AK very quickly. So they had the idea, what if you took an AK, made the barrel a little longer, made the barrel a little heavier. Now a heavy barrel is good for, when you fire a gun, the barrel gets hot, you know? So if you heat up a barrel long enough, it'll crack eventually. But the heavier the barrel, the thicker the walls of the barrel, the more heat is dispersed throughout the metal, resulting in, longer time to crack. Now, on a belt fed, you usually want to have the ability to swap barrels. The MG42 famously has a very good barrel swap system. Actually, let's go back to the MG34 and 42 real quick. Fun fact with that, the MG34, you pull the barrel out from the back. MG42, you pull the barrel out from the side. That side-mounted barrel thing, barrel swap, very good for assistant gunners. That's very easy for your assistant gunner to pull that out real quick with his gloves that were made of asbestos and swap the new barrel on. I believe it was every 2 belts you did a new barrel. Well, you would take the barrel out and let it cool off while you put the other one in, and you would just swap barrels back and forth. Every 2 belts you would fire. But the interesting fact is, MG42s were actually not put on vehicles because of that side-mounted barrel swap. It made it very difficult to, you'd have to reach out of the vehicle and do the barrel change on the side of the gun. So MG34s, where you swap the barrel from the back, actually were very preferred to use on a vehicle. And so like Jeeps and stuff like that, and like tanks, they all had MG34s. But Russia makes the RPK, which, like I said, so AK, heavier barrel, a trunnion, which is like, how you hold together the stamped metal frame. A reinforced trunnion around the barrel so that it can hold the heavier barrel and a sustained fire rate. A machine gun stock, and then a longer 45 round mags. But these I cannot hit this guy. There we go. Now, of course, all of these, the thing is that it takes the same mag as every other AK. Meaning that, yeah, if you, you as the RPK gunner have your RPK magazines, and then your assistant, he has his RPK magazines, but then everyone else in the squad just has normal 30 round AK magazines. If the situation arises to where the machine gunner and his assistant both run out of machine gun ammo, the normal troops can now just supply their standard 30-round magazines to the machine gunner, and the machine gunner can just use them. Now, let's see. Can I get this? Now, back in America, America would end up getting in a weird situation where in Vietnam they are in that weird thing where they end up with a light machine gun that is not chambered in the cartridge as their fighting rifle, which is halfway through Vietnam, starting at the Tet Offensive, which is you know, like, all you Southeast Asians out there, you know the holiday Tet? Well, in 1968, America was like clearly, they were like clearly, all the Vietnamese are going to be celebrating Tet. So they're not gonna want to fight. So let's just, you know, let's just regroup, pull back, and we'll rearm and stuff during that. So then in the post-Tet fighting, we can, you know, be, like, much better. This was horribly incorrect. Turns out, the Vietnamese expected them to do this. They expected the Americans to assume that they would be celebrating Tet. So they attacked during Tet. Which was a shock to the Americans and South Vietnamese. Which is, like I said, the 1968 Tet Offensive. But during this regroup is where a lot of the M14s were being replaced with American M16s. But a weird kind of period happens from the 60s to the 80s. Which is, well, to the 90s, but in the 90s is where it kind of changes. Where Americans are not, they don't have, let's see. What did I want to level up? I think I wanted to level up the Mountaineer. Yeah, I'm Italian Mountaineer. Actually, can I go Austrian? To be an Austrian Mountaineer? Yeah, yeah, so I can use my Gewehr 95. But, do I have anything fancy yet? Let's see what hat situation. I like this hat. I like this big mustache. But, so that'll be it for there. I'm not really sure what I can get as the Mountaineer just yet. Observer, construct periscopes, increase movement speed. Alright. Yeah, wire cutters. Okay. So basically, America ends up in that weird situation that I talked about where the standard machine gun and the standard infantry rifle do not use the same bullet. The M60 is using 7.62 NATO, while the M16 is using 5.56. Now, if this would go on until America kind of like fully replaces the M16, not the M16, the M60 pattern, with a couple of FN designs, which would be in American designation the M240 and the M249. The M240 is still in 7.62 NATO, but acts as the medium machine gun. And then the M249 is in 5.56, and is the squad machine gun officially. Now, it is called a SAW, and it is technically a SAW in that there's a guy right there. Up in that it is a machine gun that fires the same cartridge that the infantry rifle does, and can take infantry rifle magazines. But it does it in a very weird way, in that the Sol is normally belt fed, but there is a magazine well on the side of the gun. Meaning that, like, if you have a you can take if your Sol runs out of ammo and you run out of belts, you can take M16 magazines and shove them in the side and they'll work. They are apparently notoriously unreliable in that state, though. But you know where is a weird place you can see this? Bucky, like Winter Soldier, in like the Marvel movies, uses one of these. He uses a Sol. He uses a paratrooper version of the Sol, so like a shorter barrel and a collapsing stock, with like 45 round magazines. He uses it in Winter Soldier and he uses it in Infinity War. It's very weird. I don't know why. Bucky has a very, very, very weird guns. Like I said, he uses that, and then also he's got like, when he first fights Captain America in Winter Soldier, instead of having a normal gun on his hip, where like a holster would be is just like a slab of like Velcro or something, and he has like two Derringers, like little like 2-shot pocket pistols on the side of his hip. I don't know why. It's like I said, it's very weird. I don't know who was the armorer on Winter Soldier, but they made very strange choices. Anyway, eventually, what would, like, once you get into kind of, the era that I grew up with, you know, your kind of war on terror, the GWOT is what it is referred to as now, GWOT, the Global War on Terror. So this is like your 2000s. Oh my god. Oh my god. This is like your Call of Duty Modern Warfare era, to where like when you look at a squad in that era, a squad of US Army are going to be going around with M4 carbines, and M249s, and US Marines are going to be going around with M16A4s and M249s. This is still currently the case for the US Army, but the Army is trying to change this. I'll get to that in a minute. The Marines a few years ago, the Marines a few years ago, kind of went full RPK. The Marines, what they did was they basically just said, give everyone the same gun, and just configure it slightly differently for different requirements in the squad. But that way, it actually kind of goes back to the FG-42 idea, right? where what you end up having, the current Marine gun right now is called the M27 IAR, the Infantry Automatic Rifle. We remember that term automatic rifle from like an hour ago that was like used in World War One, meaning like a gun that is an assault rifle, well not an assault rifle, but like a gun that is an infantry rifle that can be pushed into service as a light machine gun. Basically, what an M27 is it is an HK416, which is an M16 that has been modified, basically, to where the way an M16 works is that there is gas gets right towards the end of the barrel, right under the front sight. This little hole. Gas comes out of that hole after you fire the bullet, goes through a long tube, and then at the end of the tube, the end of the tube is pressing against the bolt, so the gas pushes the bolt back. The way that an HK416 works is instead of a long tube, it is a short tube, and in between that short tube and the bolt is a piston. There is a lot of discussion over why this is better. Stuff like reliability and full auto, reliability when suppressed, stuff like that. But it's a big debate over how this works. Like, how is it better? So and there's really three. So there's kind of three forms of AR-15 you can get today. The M16 like pattern, like the standard AR-15. The 416, which is what I just described, the piston system. But then, when the bolt goes back on an AR-15, the bolt has to hit a spring that causes it to go back forward, and that spring is in the stock. So AR-15s you can't have a folding stock on. But SIG makes a gun called the MCR. And the MCR, they've changed the name a bunch, but MCR is kind of the accepted go-to term. The MCR is, like, it uses that system from the 416, but then it also changes where the buffer tube is, so then you can also have a folding stock. And I'll get back to the MCR shortly. What the M27 IAR, what the Marines end up doing is they say, okay, here's the squad. So everyone now has a heavy barrel, piston-driven M16. They're all, or kind of like an M4 carbine, basically. They're all suppressed. Half of them, well, one of them, all of them have a 4x scope. One of them has a 4 to 8x scope with a bipod. That guy is the marksman. Okay. So one guy has like a more long range scope on it. Like 2/3 of the guys have bipods, and any of these guys can act as machine gunners. There's one guy who is the dedicated machine gunner, but in any scenario, any one of them could potentially become a machine gunner if need be. But the other third of the squad, those guys have grenade launchers on their guns. So So it's kind of a roundabout, like, yeah, everyone can be a machine gunner. You can get kind of sustained fire. You all use the same magazines. That kind of deal, like we talked about before. Now the army. Let's come back to that. Let's come back to that. That MCR. The army is currently trying to get a new gun. And a new machine gun. Where what you it's a very weird thing going on. Basically, the army, the official, I believe, if I remember correctly and understand correctly, bayonet. If I understand it correctly, the official request of the army is that advancements in Chinese body armor makes them fear the effectiveness of 5.56 on an open battlefield, right? So they want a bullet that is not intermediate, but more of a traditional rifle round. Or at least kind of maybe in between. So it's called like 270 Fury or something. So it's like a 6.5mm cartridge. That is pretty much a battle rifle cartridge. So we're back to like the M14 like FAL kind of style. I'm just trying to spot guys all over the place right now. But this heavy smoke is not helping. I'm just trying to help this machine gunner. So yeah, so the official story is to help defeat Chinese body armor and extend the range. And it is an upgraded version of the SIG MCR called the Spear. It's very strange. A lot of people don't like the idea. Oh yeah, and this is also always going to be suppressed. There's also going to be a light machine gun. That is, I think it's just kind of basically its own design at this point. Like, and that, but that a lot of people are behind. They're like, oh yeah, that looks fine. Though I don't know if, I don't know how much the support behind that cartridge is. It's a very weird thing. Military procurement is very fun. I love reading about it. Let's see. Can I just sit up here and spot people? If so, that's what I'm going to try to do. Nope. Spot 10 people in one life is going to be so hard. Yeah, so going to see. Come on, 3 more. Ah! I don't think I did it. I think I got 7. Let's see. Oh no, I did get it. But with a periscope next. When do I level 5. Oh, but there's actually, if I saw that correctly, yeah, I have not played as a marksman yet. Oh, interesting. You can be a marksman, but the actual marksman that gets a sniper rifle is locked for now. So I just have to be a marksman with iron sights. All right, let's do it. But yeah, so basically, the American, it's also going to be weird, if they do that, if the Army goes through with this, because the Marines just adopted new guns, like I just told, like, within the past, like, 5 years. The M27s. So it will be potentially a situation where the Marines and the Army are using different things, which has happened before and used to be kind of common, actually. The last time, it was very common in the pre-cartridge era. You would get Marines and the Army would just have just different stuff. Like the Navy and the Army would just have completely different loadouts. Because they weren't really expected to, you know, kind of cross over much. The last time, but having them have different cartridges would also just be insane. The last time that happened, like during World War II, a lot of Marines spent the first few months of the war without M1 Garands, just because they were hard to get. Like they didn't have enough of them. But once they got enough of them going, the Marines ended up getting them. But they were using just like Springfields until then. When we get to like back in the 1890s more, before the 1903 Springfield, there's a very weird, which there's a book that is now out of print, but I really want to read it, which is it's by a guy named Bruce Canfield, and I actually emailed him about this, like talking about this subject, and like what would be the best way to go about this. And yeah, he was saying like probably that out of print book, if I can find a copy somewhere, is probably the best collection. To where it's a book that's covering kind of the weird naval weapons of post-Civil War, pre-World War One. To where the weirdest one, there's a lot of weird bolt-action rifles the Navy tried out in like the 1880s. Where that's a whole other rabbit hole. But the probably the weirdest era gun-wise for the U.S. is the 1890s. specifically what we went into the Boxer Rebellion with, and the Philippines, and like the Spanish-American War. The army was using Krag rifles, which are a Danish-designed bolt action that feeds from a side-loading magazine that doesn't take clips. Oh, that's teammate. That doesn't take clips. It you open like a slot from the side and you load it all in from the side, but you don't have to open the action while doing it. And that was chambered in 3040 Krag, which at the time was called 30 Army. You will find a lot of like hunting rifles that were chambered in that, and they will be called they will be labeled as being chambered in 30 Army. Meanwhile, what the Navy has is the Navy has a gun called the Winchester Lee Navy, which is a very strange looking gun. To us, from like an action perspective, as like a modern gun. This is gonna be hard to get headshots with. Where when you're talking about the like the Lee Navy, it's incredible for its time, in that it used a 6mm cartridge, and it could kind of be called an intermediate cartridge. So very low recoiling, with, you know, decent flat range. I covered what flat range and range trajectory means in a different tangent somewhere. But the and I believe it was N-block clip fed. I'm not positive off the top of my head though. So you have like a very weird like you have a very strange, very unique action in the cartridge, the 6mm Lee Navy, that is only used by the American Navy. Very weird. You know, usually, like, you'd expect, like, at least some other branches to adopt this, or at least in, like, maybe a smaller country or something. But no, only the U.S. Navy used these guns in the 1890s. And then in 1903, they were all replaced with the Springfield. I don't even think at that point. I think before the Springfield, there was a standardization where they all got replaced with the Krag. And then shortly after that, they were replaced with the Springfield, like, outright. Firing into the smoke to see if I can hit this guy. But the like another one is handguns. The Navy never had a like from the ground up cartridge firing single action gate loading revolver. Things like, or even just like single action cartridge firing, like stuff like the single action Army, the 1875 Remington, stuff like that. Or then, like I said, if we want to go include not gate loading, just talk cartridge firing. The top break Smith & Wessons, stuff like that, you know. The number 3. The Navy had oh my god, let's go Ross Gasser, and then I got a Bideo on the Italian side. I'll talk about the Bideo a bit later. Let's get this Ross Gasser, and I'll talk about how weird the Ross Gasser is. Let's see. This is a Ross Gasser. The Ross Gasser, I don't know too much about. Well, I can talk about that when I'm done with my my like Navy Marine tangent. Just know that that's a little tease to know that the Ross Gasser is a very weird revolver. Continuing, so the U.S. Army uses the 1860 Army revolver, which is chambered in 45 and 44 caliber cap and ball. And then after the Civil War, by 1873, they then get a the Colt single action army in 45 Colt as the standard arm. Now, what ends up happening at the Navy, though, is the Navy in the Civil War, the Army bought a bunch of weird, like, Civil War guns are so interesting because they were just buying like literally everything that was advanced enough at the time. So like everything that was anything is in the Civil War to some degree. Then they tried to get some standardization though, to where the Army uses 44 caliber. To a degree, they try to use 44 caliber, but they do use a lot of 36s. And the Navy uses 36s. Alright? That is the plan. Like I said, some 36s would overflow into the Army. But the Navy is mainly focused on 36s. Particularly in a coincidence, kind of, the 1851, what was originally called the Ranger, and then was renamed to the Belt model. It's immediately. What was originally called the Ranger, and then really quickly called the Belt model, had the 1851. It had a scroll mark on it commemorating a naval victory in the Mexican-American, not the Mexican-American War, the Texas War of Independence, which was a few years before the Mexican-American War. Is someone defusing that? Somebody defused the bomb, oh my god. No. But that roll marking on it, eventually gave the gun the Navy designation. But then it helps that the Navy then started using them, while the Army was using the other one. So the 44 becomes the Army, the 36 becomes the Navy, due to a couple different coincidental naming conventions. So the Navy has all these Navy revolvers, and they don't just outright get and they're cap and ball, right? So in the Civil War, but they keep these all throughout the 1870s. They don't upgrade to they don't get a new gun, right? When cartridge firing revolvers become common. What they do is in the 1880s, they send some back to Colt, and they're like, Colt, we don't want to spend money on cartridge firing guns. Can you factory convert these to where they give you a new cylinder and they cut the back out. So now instead of firing cap and ball cartridges, you now fire 38 short or 38 long Colt. So that's what the Navy does. So now they have these the Navy and the Army, two completely different guns for their primary pistols, two completely different cartridges, to where the Navy's cartridges are cap and ball handguns that have been converted to shoot cartridge guns. Like I said, a very weird thing. But eventually, the thing with the Navy being weird is that they were kind of on like the front line of I guess you could say like good ideas, to where they were trying bolt action rifles in like the early 1880s. None of them were really actions that stuck, but they were better than single shots. And then, while those pistols were so far behind in the game that eventually, when Colt made a double action swing out cylinder revolver, the 1889, which is chambered in the Navy cartridge, the Navy was very quick to adopt it. Maybe a bit too quick to adopt it, much like with the bolt action rifles. Because it needed some tinkering to become the new Army and Navy, which is when the Army also adopted it. But that ran into issues. Not really too much in the Spanish-American War, but that is also chambered in the 38 long Colt that those Navy converted revolvers were in. But those ran into stopping power issues when we get to the Philippines insurrection. The Philippines insurrection, as I'm sure you know, if you are from the Philippines, is when America got control of the Philippines from the Spanish, helped get the Spanish out, and then basically said that they were there to stay, which the Philippine people, well, the people of the Philippines, did not like. So a kind of revolution, revolt, or as they call it, insurrection, began. So the way that this was mainly dealt with was with a constable force, armed with, at the time, the surplus U.S. guns. But when the actual U.S. Army got involved, the current guns kind of became like more widespread, which they did find deficiencies in. The stopping power of the 38 cartridge, because the way that these Philippine soldiers, a lot of them would fight, were like a lot of them would fight by like hiding in a bush and then running at you and, you know, charging you with a knife or something and like just stabbing you, or like a spear. So you needed a cartridge that would stop them very quickly. And also a lot of them would use like local drugs to like numb the pain of getting shot. So you needed something that actually like broke bone and like tore muscle and stuff. Which is where the Thompson-LaGuardia tests come from. Now, the Thompson-LaGuardia test is something that I believe I've discussed before. This is the test where they got a bunch of cows, and they just shot all the cows, and then they just let them bleed out, and whichever cows died fastest, the bullets they got shot by, Those are the good bullets. And this is where they determined that Americans had to use a 45, and no 38 would be like accepted. So this is why it took America so long to adopt 9mm and stuff like that. Which is actually another thing I was open to. I was wondering about discussing a previous topic I touched on. Was the history of 9mm cartridges in relation to barrel length. And I'm really looking at the Colt Commander to where in the right after World War II, America came out with a set of requirements that said we need a new gun for officers, but hey, if it's good for everyone, we'll just give it to everyone. And it's got to have these requirements. It's got to be 9mm. It's got to be it's got to be 9mm. It's got to be under 7 inches long. None of them would fit that requirement. It's got to have at least 8 shots, I think. And it's got to weigh 25 ounces max. Now, none of the guns in the tests would fit these, I think. None of them like perfectly fit. But I believe today a Glock 19 would actually fit that test. I know a Glock 43X would win that test. But none of the guns in the test at the time did. There were like mainly 3 guns in the test. A very, very lightened Browning high power, like a Browning high power that had the barrel shortened and then just had as much metal taken off of it as possible, well, without like becoming like, you know, unusable. But that wasn't really considered good enough. It was actually considered probably pretty bad. The other option was a the main 2 of Colt and Smith & Wesson were stretch. The main 2 kind of things of Colt and Smith & Wesson were then the next like main how would you like describe it? The main like contributors where Colt comes up with, well, they already have a gun. It's the gun that the army is already using. So yeah, might as well just keep using that, right? But let's just modify it a little bit. So they take the 1911, they give it an aluminum frame to make it more lightweight. They shorten the barrel to almost 4 inches, and they chamber it 9mm. They also do a couple other things that get overlooked when discussing the Commander, and I think are actually really good improvements. They change the safety, where the safety on the 1911 just has a kind of a tiny tab. So the safety on the Commander, they let's see, reload and bolting speed. Yeah, I'll leave one for that. The Commander safety is very much upgraded in the well, kind of. The safety on a 1911 is like a plate that then on the end of the one plate there's a little tab for your thumb to hit. The Commander safety just makes the full tab hit your makes the full tab available to your thumb, right? So it's easier to disengage. Now the other big thing is that 1911s, if you grip them weird, on a standard 1911, if you hold them too high up, the hammer can hit the skin on the back of your hands. This is called hammer bite. On like standard Army 1911s. So the way commanders dealt with this. Oh my god, this intense close quarters World War I fighting. Oh my god, this is the most World War I experience I've had so far in the game. Oh my god. Oh my god. There's still a guy there. Let's reload this gate loading revolver. Oh my god. Ah! Ah! How am I alive? Okay. That was crazy. I got 10 kills in that first life. Just sitting there in that corner. But, the 1911 on the Commander Hammer, rather than having the full, like, military spur, where it's like a hook coming off the back, you know? It's round. Which makes it a little shorter, but also gives you, you know, the same decent amount of room to grab from. Let's see. But the way that, and like I said, this gets to the way to where it doesn't pinch your hand as much. So it's just generally considered, like, better. Now this all kind of comes together to a pretty good gun. The Smith & Wesson entry would be the Smith & Wesson Model 39, which I've talked about on a previous discussion regarding the history of 9mm. But these upgrades to the Commander, I really would be I am very much interested in the idea of the 1911 just being replaced by the Commander 1911 after World War II. And going into Vietnam and potentially even Korea with Commander 1911s. Because we just went in with the 1920s pattern 1911 all the way up until the 80s with no updates. So we had a non-standard, like a non-NATO pistol cartridge until the 80s. So if they didn't want to go to 9mm, and if they didn't want to get to the shorter barrel, that is still I really think the hammer situation is something that they should have just completely basically make a 1911 A2. To where the 1911 A1 changed the sights, scalloped the frame, and changed the trigger, changed the backstrap, changed a bunch of parts on it. So I think they really should have they should have made in the late 40s, right after World War II, a 1911 A2 that had the Commander hammer, and the Commander safety, at least have those two. Potentially rechamber the gun at a 9mm. Potentially, we still have guys. We are like, they are crossing this river already, but we have guys on the, like, near their spawn almost. But yeah, that kind of, oddly enough, there's a company from Turkey called T-Sauce, and T-Sauce makes like very cheap 1911s for just like having fun with. You know, you're not trying to collect a 1911 from like a historical standpoint. You're not trying to get like a highly customized like competition 1911. You just want to feel like you're a guy in like a 70s action movie and you got a 1911, you know? And they make a few different models. They make a Commander, they make a like a GI model. They have a new one called the Service Special, which I actually really like the idea of picking up. The Service Special is a 1911. It's basically the 1911 A2 that I like mentioned, that I like imagined or like dreamed of. Where it's the upgrades from a Commander 1911, but put onto a standard 1911. And the idea of it, like literally on like their promotional material, it says the idea behind the gun is like, oh, what if a guy modified his 1911 in like the post-war years? And it's like, ooh, that is what I'm here for. That is exactly what I'm trying to get. So the only problem is 9mm is much cheaper than 45 ACP. So I would like to get it in 9mm. The problem is that the Service Special does not come in 9mm. It only comes in 45. Potentially that isn't too bad. As I might just get it in 45 anyway, and 45 is not that much more expensive. It is, but I don't really go to the range too often as it is, so it's like, what is like an extra like $10 to $15 on like the one range trip I go to every. Well, it's actually, I think it's been like over a year since I went to the range. It has been, I know, because, you know, ammo expensive. And I don't have a car. But the let's see. So the like building one of these, I could technically buy one of their they make the GI model in 9mm, so I could buy that and then try to get factory parts. And then I take those factory parts and I swap them out to basically build a 9mm version of the Service Special. Or I can just get the 9mm Commander version from the start which is basically just the, like I said, an original. It's technically not. So the Commanders had aluminum frames, right? Aluminum alloy frames. But in the 70s, they started making a thing called the Combat Commander, which had a steel frame. And yeah, a 1911 really at its like at its peak, while keeping like there are 1911s, of course, that look like, that look crazy, like they're like, all raced up, or another way to prevent that hammer bite thing is to get what is called a beaver tail, which is like the back of the pistol that like curves up, and you can get a beaver tail that is really big, to like, it doesn't interfere with gloves or anything like that, and a lot of people get them. I just hate the way they look. They became a thing in like the early to mid 80s. But they weren't super popular until like the 90s. So I don't really like them, as they're just too modern looking to me. It's like at the point that you're putting those beaver tails on 1911s, the 1911 is obsolete, It's like, if you were using a 1911 at that point, there are better guns for you to use. Don't put a beaver tail on it. It's like, if I'm gonna LARP like a 1911, I want it to feel like it's like the early 70s. But the let's see. Well, that was a very fast defeat. But yeah, like I said, those TSOS guns, they're like the exact TSOS I want does not exist. Hey, look at this! Most headshots with iron sights. Look at that other guy, best accuracy with a scope, but hey, didn't have the most headshots. Most explosions survived, most headshots, most shots fired, last kill. Let's go. I'm sweeping the scoreboard today. Yeah, like I said, all those TSOS 1911s, I won't be getting one anytime soon, so I hope there's a 9mm service special by the time I get one. But if there is not, I'll have to decide, do I want a commander or do I want a service special? And it basically comes down to, do I want it to feel like a modified World War II 1911 and spend some extra money for ammo? But it would technically be accurate, because a modified World War II 1911 would be in 45. Or do I want to save some money on ammo while going into a commander size, which a commander wouldn't have been a modified World War II surplus gun, it would have just been a from the factory gun. And yeah, I'll see. I don't know. Like I said, it'll take some time, because I'm saving money to go to Dokumi. And then after that, I will have to wait for, New Jersey has a very long process when purchasing handguns. They're the only state that does it, to where every time you, basically you have to get a new gun license every single time you want a handgun, and it takes months and months. Where it's like, I can go get like a shotgun or a rifle, like, like today. But handgun takes quite a while. So yeah, and they're not even, that 1911s, I don't think it's on my priority list. Well, so the thing is, you can do them in the handgun purchasing things, you can do them in bulk, you can get like 3 or 4 at a time, and then they expire in the time that you can spend, you can maybe get 3 or 4 handguns. So it's better to do them like that, so you kind of want to save up. So it's like, I do want to get one of those 1911s to set up as like a cool guy, a 70s custom 1911, as well as a, I really, really, really want, like, my main gun that I want right now is like an Indiana Jones era handgun. Uh, Technically, an unmodified GI 1911 would fit into that. But that's not gonna. I want more of a noir aesthetic. So like an old 38 special revolver. I do have an old 38 special revolver. I just have one that is set up in the 70s configuration for like more of a 70s detective adventure. But I also want kind of a companion one that is set up for like 1930s, 40s detective adventures. You know, like noir pulp stuff. And they go up in price as they get older, and you know, as time moves, of course, you know, they're also getting older, so they're also hard to find. So I'd like to get one of those someday, soon. That's my next post-Dokumi plan, would be focusing on picking up one of those revolvers. Either a Colt or a Smith & Wesson of the, like I said, 1930s, like vintage. Preferably in 38. I'd accept 45. And if need be, if really pushed to the brink, I'd accept one in 32 Smith & Wesson long, like a Colt Police Positive in 32 Smith & Wesson long or something like that. But yeah, that is. I didn't really have a focused topic today. I kind of I began talking about the Madsen 1905 and ended here. And, you know, kind of a nice little line drawing along from piece to piece. But that was a nice little 2-hour stream to let my brain, you know, run wild. But thanks for those who showed up. Again, the rest of the day, no Kiara, no Ophi. What are we to do in this world? But I guess wait for the Girl Stalk collab. So I guess I'll see you folks there. And you'll probably see me before then, on Discord and Twitter and whatnot. So I almost just said Otsu Ophi to end this, but I'm not Ophi, I think. So yeah, I guess Otsu Lunts. Alright, see ya folks.